Hi folks, this is DIY Germany. My name is Lars. Welcome. So, winter's back at it. Actually, we thought that was it, but I guess third time's a charm. My wife came to me with a very specific request, and this is what I came up with. Looks like a pretty simple build. Yeah, we'll see about that. What this is? Oh, glad you asked. You'll find out by the end of the video. But first, let's build it. Oops.
Now that can's empty. Right.
As you might already figure, this project is one of these one-offs I had talked about before. That thing I'm about to build serves a certain purpose, and all is centered around this tray. As usual, we start by chopping wood on the table saw, scraps and leftovers. At this stage I haven't yet figured out the final dimensions and or even the way this whole thing will be constructed, but I do have a rough idea.
Yeah, sure.
For what's going to be the sides. And since I'm going to build 2 units, I'm going to need 4 of these sides. At this point, it becomes kind of obvious that the thing will hold a certain type of jar in an angle, upside down. I figured the best way to achieve this was to drill holes into the board for the jars to sit in. 3 of them, as you will see later. And to make sure it fits, I cut a little test piece, with a tool that I personally consider to be on the scarier side of things, but it works very well for this kind of application, since I don't need to keep all kinds of hole saw sizes in stock. The jar fits perfectly, although I will have to figure out how to secure it in place. But that's for later. On to the real piece. As I said, I have very high respect for this drilling tool. It spins fast and there is no safety. And yeah, that was close. But it missed me, which is a good thing, I guess. Right?
Shite.
And well, this also showed me my poor choice of material. It split along the grain, of course, and I don't want that to happen to the finished holder.
Now, look what I found. And this is almost too funny.
True, it's a strip of birch ply, and I had doubled that up at some point. And it has the perfect width and length to securely clamp it down on the table. So I marked out the hole locations all along this piece and, well, fired up the unsafe, scary Mongolian hole driller. Literally. Well, this isn't spruce or pine anymore, it's dense ply, which is a lot more resistant. Yep, this really happened.
I hate winter.
And it wasn't the first time.
This sucks.
See, this hardly ever happens when it's warm, so my best guess is that due to the cold environment, the metal parts of the chuck just aren't sitting as firmly as they do when it's warm. And with this much resistance, I mean, this little drill press really needs to work hard for such a cut. So, well, I placed the chuck in the oven for an hour at 100 Celsius, which is 200-ish Fahrenheit, cleaned everything and whacked it back on. And while this needed time to cool down and lock itself in place while doing so, I came to the conclusion that a different approach would be the better option. I had 2 holes already started, so first off I used the jigsaw to cut the inner circles loose. And then the obvious choice was to use a pattern bit on the router to clean up the holes. But as you can see, the base plate is simply too small for this application. It's lacking support.
Darn it.
So I grabbed a ply base I had made a while ago and, well, began a blind flight, kind of. But hey, being able to see the router bit at work spinning at like 15,000 RPM is totally overrated anyway. Right? Yeah, well, at this stage I cut the board down to size, since I had already decided to proceed with this method. The 2 holes on the one piece were going to serve as a template for the other board. So again I used the jigsaw to cut away most of the waste, staying kind of close to the lines. And then I used the router again to transfer the holes from one board to the other. Once that was done, I flipped the template piece and marked out the 3rd hole. Rinse and repeat. And yeah, I will really need to make myself a proper acrylic plate at some point.
Okay. Batterie. So, what I realized just now, didn't even think about that, is that this is too thick. Because the glass is supposed to stick out here. Yeah, but that makes life for me even easier, because I'm gonna split this in half, and then I have my 2 pieces.
Resawing on the table saw. And to be honest, I couldn't care less at this stage about the cut quality on the inside of the pieces. The cuts weren't exactly pretty, but were to become the underside of the 2 stands. This whole project had already taken its toll on me, and it had taken way longer than anticipated, so I couldn't be bothered. On to the sides and mounting. A 45 would be sufficient, and this way I wouldn't have to deal with any weird angles.
That works.
At this point, it had already become very obvious to me that this was one of these days in the workshop. I wonder if you can relate. I just wanted to be done with it already. A
quick rub on the belt sander to at least break the edges and smoothen them a little bit. And on to assembly, with a little CA glue for temporary hold.
Now the can's empty. Great.
Well, as you might imagine, it's not like I was in the mood to put up with too much more patience anymore at this point. But I got it assembled in the end. That must be worth something, right?
Ooh, yeah.
Now, remember in the beginning when I realized I would need some kind of support for the jar? Well, a simple Becker board should do the trick.
Oops. Bye-bye.
One more screw into the Becker from both sides. And done. Finally. Quite a journey, wasn't it? Now, as to the purpose of those stands, they're for growing sprouts in the jars as treat for our chickens, which does make a lot of sense, especially at this time of the year, since they have a hard time finding nutritious food on frozen ground in the snow in their chicken run. So, there you have it. How about you? Do you have these days in the workshop too, when everything just seems to fight you along the way? Let me know in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe. And, as always, be safe, be good. Until next time. See ya. Cheers.